Alright, more interesting coverage from the same Machakos, where Kalonzo Musyoka's statements are also just tripping into the people's mirror. And so before they become late, we want to capture what happened in Machakos and the statements that Kalonzo said for you in a very timely way. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let us just quickly delve right into the statements of Kalonzo, which were made, of course, in this part of Machakos, where they were seeing the funeral or the burial of the late Mzee Jonathan Kiilu, and of course, as we have said, was attended by Rigathi Gachagua, Honorable Kalonzo, Honorable Eugene Wamalwa, and of course, among other people, including the governor of Machakos County, Wavinya Ndeti. If this is your first encounter with our channel, The People's Mirror, or if you've been watching our stories here at The People's Mirror, but you have never subscribed before, please hit the subscribe button so that we keep detailing to you what happens in the Kenyan political scene immediately it unfolds. But other than that, also because you will also help us reach our target of 5,000 subscribers, which we have set and we dream to hit by the end of this month. Now let us delve right in without further ado on the statement of Kalonzo, which first begin with a lot of concentration being given to the youth. But before I make a commentary, let us listen from the horse's mouth.
It has been said and is public, it has been public, it's public knowledge that the leader of this country said that our children should be shot on the legs. Kiongozi kasema vijana wa Gen Z wapigwe risasi kwa miguu.
At the time when the grassroots elections of President William Ruto's party, the UDA party, is now largely concentrating on the youth, and even on his latest visit in Baringo yesterday, the president's new trajectory of campaigning is said to be considered that centers around the youth. Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka is using this opportunity in Machakos today to remind the youth of the statements of the president in 2024 and 2025. Now let's put a comment here before we even go deeper into this particular analysis. You remember, due to the need of stopping sloganeering and actually giving the Kenyans alternative, and we captured it here at the People's Mirror, the United Opposition has hinted a new approach into 2026, the approach of offering an alternative to Ruto's policies. And one of the ways that they are going to ensure that they do this is to actually mirror what President Ruto is doing, then they offer an alternative. So these statements of Kalonzo are not actually misplaced. They are coming at a time when they have understood that the structure of the UDA party right now, including the major concern with these grassroots elections, is one that is aimed at, of course, looking at the youth. And now Honorable Kalonzo has started his speech in Machakos today by first reminding the youth that in 2024 and in 2025, when they were out in the streets, of course, we were advancing for the rights of the youth and, of course, good living conditions for the youth in Kenya, but majorly against the finance bill of 2024. It is Honorable President William Ruto that actually ordered that the youths be shot in the leg. This particular memory is very, very important, coming at a time that the president is allegedly said to have penetrated the youth using resources and using influencers to actually shift the narrative that occurred in 2024 and 2025 in favor of the UDA party in the major elections in 2027. Now, the speech of Honorable Kalonzo in Machakos today is centering on the youth, on education, and of course in Africa. Listening into it a little bit more before we make further commentary is that it will show, of course it shows from his speech, that is comparing the spirit of the youth in Kenya to actually have been an African wake, and even beyond Africa, a worldwide wake, as the call of the youth right now is to be included in the decisions of the country. So let's listen a little bit more before we go further into commenting on the statements that Kalonzo said.
That is not politics, that is factual. Chukueni ukura. Na mimi nikasema hatutaki kupiga Ruto kichwa risasi, lakini tumpige kwa debe. Na hiyo kura yetu tumpige risasi moja, one and final one time, so that apate kujua kwamba kiongozi wa nchi anabeba kila mtu.
That is the position of Kalonzo, offering himself as a leader now that will carry the interests and aspirations of everyone. Now, this is feeding very well into the playbook of the United Opposition this year of actually offering themselves as the alternative to Ruto's government. He's saying that instead of now shooting President William Ruto, which he says is not the intention of the United Opposition at all, and of course anyone that is even thinking of that constitutes a mental element of treason, but he says that they want to oust President William Ruto in 2027 very fairly on the ballot box. Now, away from the youth education in the wake of the youth in Africa, which now Honorable Kalonzo actually measured on, asking these particular youths to be the voice of change in the 2027 ballot, Honorable Kalonzo also commented on the stature of the ODM party right now. Not only the fact that he feels like the party is being taken capture or is being is going under capture by the states and by the UDA party as the ruling party. He has also commented on the ongoing feud between Honorable Junet Mohammed and members of this particular party that feel that Honorable Junet Mohammed might not have used the resources the way they were required to be used during the campaign period. Now, Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, in a jest, has asked the deputy of Honorable Junet Mohammed in the as the minority leader in the National Assembly to actually step up and now become the minority leader of the National Assembly and call a meeting within their structure, saying that Junet Mohammed's now his morality politically has been shredded by this particular revelation that is coming out of 2022. Let us just listen briefly on that bit where he actually commented on Junet Mohammed before we delve in deeper into the rest of the analysis, where he's talking about the state capture and so of course following through the footsteps of Raila Amolo Odinga, asking for Marjan, the CEO of the Iebc, to quit office, saying that he knows that Marjan is corrupt and is not going to be in a 2027 election that's actually being overseen by Honorable Marjan. But before that, let us hear his comments on Junet Mohammed.
And I want to thank Mheshimiwa Robert Bui as a minority leader in the National Assembly. Ameshikilia patriotic front na wale wengine, akawa kiongozi ambaye anaweza kuaminika. Na kijana mdogo, I want to thank you, Mheshimiwa Robert Bui. We have a lot of respect for you. Na hii heshima and how you conduct your colleagues vile. Sasa unaona Mheshimiwa Junet amefichuliwa for who he was. Hey, sasa I think you should even now call your meeting as you may whatever remains of it. Sema sasa wewe ndio kiongozi katika bunge, because what respect to Mheshimiwa Junet carry after what has happened within ODM. And then nachukua kila wakati kuambia ndugu zetu wa ODM, kumbukeni heshima ya Raila Amolo Odinga, na hiyo tuichunge. Nyinyi hapa Machakos na kwingineko kwa mara tatu 15 political years mlisimama na huyo ndugu. Sasa hatutaki chama chake pia kitekwe nyara. Na huyu ambaye anasema ni William Ruto atachunga ODM, atachunga vipi?
Of course, those were the comments, and now they're going beyond Junet Mohammed to the aspect of ODM being taken state capture. Now, first, he is congratulating the member from his Wiper party, as I said, for actually being holding the house while he's so young, saying that he should now call for a meeting within their own structures and ascend to that particular position as the minority leader within the parliament. But other than that, he's also commenting really on this other story of the ODM capture, saying that the ODM should not be captured. Of course, he has asked the ODM members to return a hand following the relationship that they have had with Raila for the past 15 years. But he has also used that particular opportunity to ask the ODM party to be in order, not to be taken capture by Ruto, who he says might lie to the ODM party that he'll take care of the ODM party, but according to Kalonzo, he will not take care of the ODM party. Now, when it comes to the ODM party, both Kalonzo and Ruto, of course, are insiders of this party from as early as when it was formed. And this particular party now remains to be the party that holds their political future come 2027. Should the United Opposition decide on Honorable Kalonzo as their pick ahead of the 2027 major race, then of course looking towards the ODM direction will be very, very necessary to consolidate that particular support and backyard. And so this statement is coming at a time where Honorable Kalonzo is now asking the ODM party to return a hand after the 15 years that the Kamba people have stood together with Raila Amolo Odinga should not be taken lightly, but rather an introduction of request of votes moving into 2026 and 2027 of the ODM cohort, saying that they of course need that particular cohort to rally behind them in these major polls. Now, President William Ruto is also taking a very keen interest in this particular party, being the ODM party, moving into these major polls, because the backyard of the ODM party itself gives the president an advantage over the consolidation of the mountain that is now currently under the hands of Rigathi Gachagua. So it is very, very important to have, coming from both ends, this conversation that are being aimed at the ODM party, because looking at it broadly, the ODM party holds the future if they stay united and negotiate as one bloc of the presidency of 2027, a future that previously the mountains unity has always been known to actually hold. So for Kalonzo, if the mountain unity can be on his back moving into 2027, and the ODM party also decide to return the hand, of course, of the Kamba support that has existed before for the past 15 years, atakuwa na a bigger advantage ahead of these elections kushinda President William Ruto. For President William Ruto's math, akiweza consolidate all these regions of the Somali people, which are a very serious population right now in the voter mass, then aweze pia consolidate the ODM part as a strong voting bloc under the grip of Oburu Oruanga in the 2027 major polls, then atakuwa malifiti sana to topple the united opposition in that particular major race. But that was not the end of Kalonzo's statement today. Kalonzo has also talked about the whole country rejecting President William Ruto and of course commenting on what he terms as state capture, saying that even during the time of Raila Amolo Odinga himself, he was aware of state capture being present, and that state capture is still being experienced post his death. Now let us listen a bit on the state capture part, of course, before he accuses Marjan.
Strong. Kila mtu sasa jiamulie kuwa strong for yourself and for your country and not to be cowed. We want to categorically say, it is wrong to regulate the church. Kanisa. Hey, now they were prayed into office. And I know some of you here are friends of William Ruto. Mwambieni, this one is a no-go zone. This one is a no-go zone. The freedom of worship is guaranteed in the Constitution. So that is why you must start. Before you do anything else, you look at the Constitution. The freedom of worship is guaranteed. What does a guarantee mean? Pengine wengine sisi kama sisi tungekuwa kizuizini. But you are here to continue holding this nation together, giving it hope. Nikamilishe tu kwa mambo mengine walisema tuchukue kura.
Yes, so that formed the basis of his, of course, commenting on, of course, Honorable William Ruto's capture of both the church. So other than that, of course, also Honorable Kalonzo did not spare President William Ruto when it came to this Nyota program that now he says the president is using as a tool to actually bribe voters ahead of 2027. He also says that ahead of this Nyota program in 2025, there was the empowerment program that was being dished across the nation by President William Ruto, and he accepted that those was state money that were actually being used to empower the individuals, and he told their supporters to actually use that money, but then do not vote for President William Ruto in 2027. He has discredited, of course, both the Nyota program and the 2025 empowerment programs, saying that they are programs or use of resources that, of course, are set to dupe the electorate moving into the major elections next year. Now, the most interesting part, because we will play on the Nyota, we will would not play the sound bit on the Nyota part. But the most interesting part was when Honorable Kalonzo now accused Marjan of renewing a contract with the parties, or rather the company that had stolen the votes from President Raila in the previous election. The former Prime Minister Raila Amolo Odinga, pardon me for using the term president over there. In the previous elections, and now Honorable Kalonzo feels that Marjan is already conflicted and corrupt and should not oversee, of course, this particular election moving into 2027. Now, these are very serious and interesting allegations, bearing in mind the fact that the united opposition, for as long as they have existed prior to the formation of the current one, have always blamed the Iebc of impartiality come every election. And of course, we expected that in this very new in this 2027 election, there would have not been such accusations, with the fact that the formation of this particular team of the likes of Okuro Okot was not hugely contested by this opposition, but was rather called for by the opposition to put an end to the vacancies that existed within the country. Now, just a year into the election year, it seems that this particular sequence and narrative is back, and the united opposition are saying that as long as Marjan is the CEO of the Iebc, then they are not going to be part of that particular election. Now they are calling upon the Iebc to clear up Marjan because he has less than a year to concluding his particular term as the CEO of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, and give him all his dues so that he can exit the scene before this particular election is held in 2027. So at this point, we are playing the news bite on where he's talking about the Nyota program and the empowerment issue, leading of course deep down into the Marjan part, for the purposes of just elaborating what we have said before we make a final commentary, of course, on what Kalonzo is saying when it comes to Singapore.
Vijana wetu wachukue hizo pesa. It is not enough to start an industry, but it is something we all support. Remember, Uhuru Kenyatta had kazi mitaani na vitu kama hivi, lakini msije mkababaishwa na mambo kama hayo. The country has rejected William Ruto, even business people.
Of course, he said that the country now has rejected President William Ruto, and went ahead to give an example of even business community having rejected President William Ruto. Now, in a very interesting twist of events, Kalonzo was admitting that there are business communities that might visit him or visits him at home, and whenever they have visited President Kalonzo, the former deputy president's home, that is the former deputy president Honorable Kalonzo's home in Karen or in the village, then the first thing that happens is that they are called from the Ruto's camp and they are being asked why they visited Kalonzo's camp and what they wanted out of that. This would be interesting only if you heard it from Kalonzo himself before we make a commentary on it.
Wale watu ambao wanataka kusaidia chama, kusaidia wale wengine, right? Mtu anapigiwa simu na polisi, anaambiwa tunaona ulienda kwa Kalonzo nyumbani, ulienda kufanya nini? That is how desperate they have become. Because I've also the freedom to receive my visitor. I'm a civil. Yani mtu akionekana amepigia.
No, that is it. So he says that this particular new act that was brought into play, the act that is called the amendment to the Cybercrime, the Computer Misuse and the Cybercrimes Act, is to the effect that he says has given the government access to, among other things, including his calls, so that whenever he's in calls or whenever he has interaction with people, the police already knows who contacts Kalonzo and what Kalonzo says. Now, it was after this that he descended on accusing Marjan of renewing a contract with the company that had seen the failure of Raila Odinga in the previous election, saying that Marjan is unfit to be the CEO of this particular body moving forward.
Kalonzo simu. Now, Cyber Crimes Act hiyo wanafuata. Hey, simu Kalonzo lona na simu nani nini. Ona matata chao. William Ruto no enukie. Sema one time. Wangapi wanasema one time? Asante. So, my friends, they are going to talk to you. Nono to your music. Nikanama motabe. Mwekewe na we are saying we had agreed mtu anaitwa Marjan. My colleague Eugene was a member of NADICO, and he was so clever. Alikataa kuweka saini. Hakuweka saini. Nikajaribu kumshawishi, sijui alienda Rwanda, sijui wapi. Aliona hii shida itakuja. We agreed that the CEO of Iebc, anaitwa Marjan, when there was no commission, he moved with a lot of speed, akaleta watu wanaitwa Smartmatic, akarenew contract yao, wale watu waliibia Raila kura. Wakasaini kila kitu, makamishna wakija, ile tume mpya hawajui, wakapata kwamba he has already renewed those contracts. An illegal thing, because we were not supposed to do it. Pamoja na aliyekuwa naitwa ni advisor sasa wa Ruto State House, Professor Gulie.
Now you see, has accused both Professor Gulie and Honorable Marjan for having been involved in a contract that so that one end of the election or one end of the competitors in the election did not have a fair run. Now, to put a conclusion to these particular statements that have been made in Machakos within the course of the 10th of January, of course, he has gone ahead to also tell President William Ruto that a man has to endure the consequences of their own actions. And of course, he also talked about the Simon Sinek's book called Leaders Eat Last, telling President William Ruto that leaders eat last. This is the time that Honorable Kalonzo also got a chance to comment on the tarmac road of Wavinya Ndeti, saying that he is proud that the tarmac road that has been made by Honorable Wavinya Ndeti is not in any way leading to his house, so that this can also be said as one of the things that he has done. Now, while he was talking about the same, he has attacked the Singapore vision. Honorable Kalonzo now says that Singapore vision does not make sense. According to Honorable Kalonzo, he feels like it's a diplomatic embarrassment to actually compare your country to another country, saying that it would have been important to do something like they did, where they gave Vision 2030 when they were in the Iebc government, and saying that if 30 years was not fit, then they would have said Vision 2060 or 2100, whatever amount of years that was needed to implement the Ruto idea that would liken our country to the state of Singapore. But comparing the country Kenya to state of Singapore and saying that Kenya is supposed to move forward in the direction of Singapore is now a diplomatic embarrassment, as per the statements of Kalonzo, saying that even Singapore are wondering that what are these people saying, why are they comparing our country with theirs. So of course that is the end of that particular statement. He has hinted that the election must take place in 2027. Of course, there have been talks of certain groups of individuals who feel like a referendum should be introduced, and in this particular referendum of 2027, among the things that should be discussed, of course, is the term of the president. There was a bill that was introduced sometimes back by the Senate of Nandi County, Honorable Cheregi, that was looking for an extension of term of 7 years for the MCA seat, which was seen to be an introduction of something that would require a 7-year term for the presidency. Now, Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka has restored faith to his supporters and to the Kenyan people, saying that the election will and must take place in 2027, and there will be no room for such a referendum that will alter the constitutional dimensions. Now, later on, ladies and gentlemen, more stories coming out of Machakos will be covered here at the People's Mirror, but this has been a pleasure recapping for you what has come out of it while Kalonzo was speaking, bearing in mind the fact that Kalonzo has not been making a lot of speeches since the beginning of this year, and so this was one of the most public speeches that he has made since the year began. This is the People's Mirror. We'll keep our lenses kept throughout the nation, including on the results of these grassroots elections that are taking place across the country right now for the ruling party, and of course the statements that were made by Rigathi Gachagua in this very meeting. Thank you, and keep it the People's Mirror until our next episode.